Howdy, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome,
Hey.
welcome. How are we?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. You guys sent me down a rabbit hole of being like, well, why didn't we get the email? What happened? What happened to the email? Where's the email? And I'm like, yeah, because the automation broke on yesterday,
Damn
and so
Zapier.
We need your hand holding, Kenny. We
Should we
well,
blame
it's
Ryan?
it's
can't do it
it's
without
Should
you.
blame Ryan.
there's a few different things that were part of being a culprit, but it's okay. We will get this figured out at some point in the future, but it's not going to happen right now.
And we're not going to have Blake on this show, so it's
Automation
a
got
little,
him too, Fred.
Yeah, I know.
Automation.
Moment of
Finally.
silence. Play taps.
So
And
If
then
there's-
there'll be just be one person left that has never missed a BCR, and at some point I got
Yourself.
to take a vacation, and then I
Yeah.
got to let Fred and Ryan
We
not
just
fuck
won't
this
do
up.
it.
yeah, that's not that's not possible. I will totally screw it up.
I don't know how to generate the links.
It's automation supposed to take care of it, but that's
They
that
got
didn't
Wi-Fi
happen.
wherever you go on vacation, so you're good. You're good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm always a Wi-Fi signal away.
As long as you can just set up the links, we can handle the conversation. We can
Okay.
do that. I believe.
All right.
I believe we can handle that.
I believe that's good too. Okay, we can. I'll try to go on a vacation at some point. Not yet though. But let's go ahead. Let's start kicking off tonight's topic. This is one thing that I thought of a couple nights ago, and I said, you know what, this would probably be kind of juicy for a roundtable. So here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back. It is Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. I'm Kenny Coleman,
Ryan Cecil here.
Fred Minnick.
and this is Bourbon Community Roundtable number 108. It's always one of our favorite ones to do. And this one is going to have full of one topic, one idea that I had, because I don't know if I'm just getting numb to it or I'm just going like, where the hell did all this come from? But it is something that we'll dive into here in a second as we start talking about hazmat whiskeys and hazmat bourbon. But before we do that, we got two other people that want to chime in and say hi. And so I'm going to go to the guy that's right next to me on my screen, which is Brian.
Hey, everybody. 108. It's fun to be here. I kind of thought it might be, since you guys have an affinity for 108, that might be something to do with that. But Hazmat fits right into that. Looking forward to the topic.
Yeah. Hazmat almost doesn't fit into that because I don't think that we'll ever be able to have a hazmat, but that's for a different subject. But let's go ahead. Jordan, you're up next.
How's it going? This is Jordan from Breaking Bourbon. Always happy to be here.
Yes. Thank you, Jordan.
Happy to
And
have
thank you
you.
again, Brian. And everybody's probably wondering, like, oh, where's that other whiny guy that never has good audio? I don't know. We'll see if Blake feels like popping his head in.
Oh, you
for
think
now,
he will? You think he will?
He's gonna pop in on the phone and he's gonna interrupt us. It's gonna happen. I have a feeling it's gonna be there. If it doesn't, then there's only one person remaining that has never missed a Bourbon Community Roundtable.
That's right.
And
Kenny Coleman.
I'm gonna have to just go ahead and take the crown. So we'll
Take
see.
the crown.
We'll see what happens.
There can be only one.
Yes.
And also, Kenny has the power to not allow him in when he comes in with the crappy phone and audio.
Sure.
This is true.
So
This is true.
But you always end up letting him in.
he
I
does.
know it's like you feel so bad for him that you just got to do it. You just throw him a bone. You're just like, fine. Here,
Poor
you go.
guy.
I mean, I know. It's like one of the only friends he has.
That is true. And he's
That's
an,
true,
he's
though.
an
It is
accountant,
true.
right?
And it's only because
So-
he's your brother.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's kind of talk a little about today's subject. So this is one that I had just ever so recently just became, I wouldn't say fascinated, but kind of like, what the hell's going on? And that's because hazmat bourbon, hazmat whiskey, anybody that doesn't know this, and hazmat is anything that's over 140 proof. And for a very long time, this has felt like it was, just like it's just like something fun. It was
Anomaly.
a very rare occurrence. The only times that I would think that we actually ever saw hazmat bourbon was you had that one release of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. You've had maybe like one or two releases, maybe a couple of George T. Stagg and William Llewellyn. But now it seems like every freaking week there is a new hazmat bourbon or a hazmat whiskey that's coming out, and it is just like completely obliterated.
Yeah.
When I look at sales cycles and everything like that, is that everybody just loses their shit over 140 proof bourbon. And so part of my mind is going like, why? Is it the novelty? Sure, there is some novelty to it, but I'm sure there's some historical context here that we're going to get enlightened with. So I might as well just go and hand it over to Fred.
Yeah.
The guy with the glasses.
Well, Eli, thank you. One of the two authors here with glasses, by the way. Yeah, Brian, shout out to you, my fellow glass man. I like yours better than mine, though. You got some nice. I like the
daughter
white,
picked them out. I can't claim them.
Yeah, those are nice.
Got to make sure you still look good.
So the historical context is actually really fascinating because of what the laws used to be for making bourbon. Up until 1962, the law was the maximum barrel entry proof to be bourbon was 110. They changed it in 1962 for tax purposes. So there was no way that they could get their proof up high enough and still call it bourbon, even if they want to do barrel, straight out of the barrel. So Weller had a full proof back then, it'd be 107 proof. Maybe there was like, I think 110 release in like the 40s or 50s, but for most part, cask strength did not even exist until you had like Noah's Mill, which Evan Colsfien was really, had a lot of success with that in Japan. And then Booker's comes out around the same time. That has a bit of a stronger presence in the domestic market. And it's just kind of like it has its like niche fans. And then George T. Stagg comes out with the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. And that's really what started pushing the envelope a lot harder. And you would have companies like Brown-Forman and even Pernod Ricard. They were very much against cask strength, period, let alone hazmat. And the rationale was it was against the responsibility charter of the Distilled Spirits Council. And so for those who don't, follow tax code like Brian and I, basically there is an industry, a trade industry group called the United States Distilled Spirits Council, and we call it DISCUS, and they basically dictate what is responsibility. They have governing power from the U.S. government to say what can pass as a responsible advertisement. And for a long time, it was thought that anything that was like cask strength would be blocked from a responsibility perspective. And that kind of went out the window when Booker No smashed a lot of things, and that was one of them. Was that he made it okay to barrel 120, 130 proof bourbon. Booker's, eventually Elijah Craig barrel proof, the Stagg family, all that stuff really captures palates. And I really think that when you started seeing that these cask strength products woo tasters at spirits competitions after we have tasted 300 to 1,500 spirits over the course of a weekend, and one of the few things that we can taste is still the cask strength, I think people started like going higher and higher to pursue awards, because cask strength products crush awards. They do really, really well on awards. And I've been a taster in this industry for a very long time, and you can say it's the alcohol, but really they are picking their best barrels for some of those cask strength products. The hazmat thing, I would say the development really has been the last 5 years. I just picked a 172 proof barrel from 291 for Club Marzipan. It was 9 years old, and it did not taste like it was 172 proof. But we see the growth of hazmat stuff coming out with light whiskey, which has higher it has higher off the still proof. It has a higher barrel entry proof. It goes into used barrels. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with light whiskey that you can. I think people started having a hankering for light whiskey, and that started having a bit of a trickle down effect. And of course, I may be in the minority on this. I just think there's a lot of people who want to feel as close to the warehouse and the barrel as they possibly can, and you don't really get much more close than a bottle that's about 140, 145 proof.
At 172, you might as well just buy Everclear at that point, man. You're just, it's just,
it was pretty. It tasted like a cherry syrup. It wasn't. Didn't really taste that hot.
So Everclear plus Robitussin. Got it.
That's not Robitussin, but some kind of
Robitussin.
a cherry cordial. How's that? Drop a cherry cordial in there.
Cherry cordial. I like that.
Well, now that you gave us kind of historical context, I'll ask the easy one to the group here is what do you think is the attraction for a consumer to sit there and try to chase higher and higher and higher proof? Is it the same kind of concept of, it's like just drug use, and it's like as soon as you do, one trip, it's like, hey, let's do this 50 more times, and let's just try to make it more intense every single time. Like, what do you all think is like the true attraction on why somebody just wants to keep chasing higher and higher proof?
Humans love numbers.
I think it's a little bit of that, Ryan, right? So there's going to be people who do just chase the number. And we have, Fred's point, and he picked that 170 plus barrel. World Whiskey Society at the end of 2024 came out with the 13-year-old 160 plus, which drank a lot lower. And I think so. There's always going to be like this small set of like diehard bourbon drinkers that will chase proof, and mainly because they think like, well, the higher the proof, it's the more elevated experience of, to Fred's point, being the closest you can get to the distillery right from the barrel, stuff like that. I think it's also, if you think about like the bourbon drinker life cycle, right? It's like people come in, they like taste bourbon for the first time, the friend gets them into it, or wherever they may be. They keep going. It's like a life cycle. Up, then they discover single barrels. Up, then they discover barrel proof, and like up, then they discover like really high barrel proof. They're getting better at picking out flavors as their palate develops. Up, now there's this thing called Hazmat. It's like there's always going to be new consumers who are in that trend. I think the people who are diehard, bourbon drinkers, really into just the whiskey hobby in general, and have been for a number of years or decades, I think the number who are actually chasing proof are pretty low. I mean, being able to consume a high proof Hazmat bottle, like, you're just not going to sit down and drink Hazmat on a nightly or even weekly basis, right? It's just not going to happen, especially when you start seeing those really absurdly high proof ones, like 160, 170 proof. You're going to sip on it for a long time. You're going to pour it, and they're really interesting when they don't taste that high in proof. But then in the back of your head, you're always thinking, well, I can't have too much of this, or else I'm just going to feel destroyed the next day. But I do think, it's those two groups of folks that really stand out the most, because your average consumer is going to see 140 proof bourbon and go, I don't want to taste it. I don't want to be near it. Like, this is absurd. But I think it's just new people always entering into the quote unquote bourbon hobby. And then there's going to be others who do chase that proof number. But for the most part, everyone else is going to try one or two. Maybe they'll recircle it every few years, but they're not going to be constantly buying these things, or else you're just going to end up with a shelf full of whiskey that you're not drinking too often.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of novelty to tie onto that. I mean, you've got so many bourbons that taste like water to us now is maybe another part of the equation. You drink now an 80 proof bourbon, you're like, you don't even taste bourbon anymore. So to Jordan's point, that's true too. Your tolerance builds and you want something higher. For me, the sweet spots, in that high 100s to low teens. I mean, I think that's where I get the most flavor. You get it for a novelty sometimes, but I'm shocked. The whole point of Kenny bringing this episode up, I mean, it's, where are they all coming from? I don't know why they're coming out, and I can only put it on a novelty.
Yeah, that was kind of like my big question. And Ryan, I'll let you speak up here in a second, was just like, I don't know, like, these are just coming out of the woodwork. It used to be very rare, like finding 140 plus proof bourbon, especially a bourbon, very, very rare to find. Now it feels like every couple days I get an email from Sealbox, or Breaking Bourbon is posting a new review, and every single one is Hazmat. I'm kind of like, what the shit just happened? I mean, is this the first tale that we can get people thinking about global warming that it's like, yeah, it's our whiskey. It's getting hotter. This is all kind of flowing into it here. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I had the same question. It's like, how is there so many these days? And like, I understand like light whiskey, it's easy to get proof. It People that get amazed by how high proof a light whiskey is are just not educated in this space. It's like, guys, it already goes in the barrel at 160 proof, and it's in a used cooperage and they age forever. It's not surprising that they're that high proof. But it is kind of cool when a bourbon is a hazmat. That's the novelty. That's like, because you just don't see it very often. I mean, hell, we have barrels and we never see them increase in proof that high. Now, I think I reached out to some friends in the industry about this. I am like, why is there so much hazmat, stuff now? And what I've been told is that a lot of times hazmats or, those higher proof ones, the distilling team, the quality control people don't like that for like their products. So they typically got put into like lower end products and blended out and expanded it. But I think because of the rise of NDPs and sourced whiskey, they're now putting them out on the market more. You especially see a ton of them from Barton that are coming out in these high proofs. And then you also have people like down in like southern climates where it's hotter. They're able to get 125, 130 whiskey, let sit in Georgia or wherever, Mississippi, and that's going to increase the proof. But it is amazing. Like, it's funny, like, a distillery that's looking for the optimal flavor thinks these barrels are not optimal flavor, but it's what whiskey consumers are wanting, which is fascinating to me. But I think it's, that Elijah Craig barrel proof hazmat was amazing. It was really, really good. I mean, that thing's dangerous. Like Jordan said, if you drink 2 of those, I mean, you're like hungover like hell the next day. But it was really good. But a lot of the hazmats that I'm trying today don't really like live up to what the rare hazmats that we had, with the antique collection and the Elijah Craig barrel proof. But it is fascinating that even the whole light whiskey high proof thing blows my mind, though, that consumers are like, oh, hell yeah, high age light whiskey. That just, it's like, come on, guys. Like, it's the cheapest product that's being made and put in to the ecosystem of whiskey. But people still get excited about it. So the market is what it is.
Yeah, I would say let's touch on the light whiskey thing for a minute, because I had that in my notes as something to talk about, just because I think the average consumer is getting this blurred vision, lack of a better term, of really like what a hazmat whiskey or hazmat bourbon should be. Like a hazmat bourbon, super rare, very kind of hard to find. I know we've talked a little bit about, all of a sudden you see these other ones popping up. But when you see, whether it's in, I saw, Barrel Bourbon just released one in their decade where they're using high aged light whiskey to get over that 140 proof point. It's the same type of playbook that everybody else is doing as well. Is that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is this a game worth playing? Because a lot of these whiskey geeks and some of these consumers, as soon as they see anything over 140, their eyes light up, their hairs on their arms start standing up. Is this the right game to be playing, to saying like, all right, well, consumers want something over 140. Let's start blending in this light whiskey, jack the proof up as high as we can go so we can help boost some sales.
I'm going to go back to a comment that I probably sound like a broken record, but I feel, especially in this conversation, it's worth repeating, because I said this multiple episodes. I think we need to differentiate like the average consumer, and I think we need to differentiate like people who are really into the whiskey hobby and who are diehard bourbon drinkers. Because the average consumer will never want higher proof, right? And I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. You introduce folks to bourbon, or even people who drink bourbon a lot but aren't like proof chasers. You pull out like something 110 or above, they're like, no, thank you. Right? Not at all. Like, not for me. I enjoy 100 proof. Maybe that's too much. I enjoy 90, 98, 96, whatever. Right? So like the average consumer, I don't think is appreciating a higher and higher proof option. But diehards who are chasing single barrels or chasing hazmat products, yeah, they're like, bring it on, give it to me, just like you said, either Kenny or Fred, like it's like a heroin addict, right? They want more and more and more. Will that eventually bite folks in the ass? Maybe, but I think everything's so super cyclical. I think it might have been Rarebird who put a comment in there. Like you can just see like short barrels, right, was the thing. Then stickers and wax and everything else. Now it's hazmat, light whiskey. I'm sure at some point the trend flips back and it's like, all right, let's find barrel proof whiskeys that are like the lowest proof possible, right? Let's show me like a 90 barrel proof or a 88 or something like that. Like it's just eventually going to happen. So I think, I don't think it'll eventually bite them in the ass, but I do think it's playing the game of, well, when do we pull the plug on these and try and catch on to the next trend?
Yeah, and there's a response going back to Brown-Forman's original thoughts on cask strength products in the 90s and early 2000s. I'll bring that up as something that anyone coming out with a hazmat should consider. There's a real danger, like an actual physical danger to these, and that is transportation. You can't just have your basic run-of-the-mill cork or your basic synthetic closure. You need to have that bottle ready to withstand a 3-day to 6-day journey across the continental United States in a truck. And if your product, the cork comes off and it leads to some kind of explosion or something, these things are actually literally labeled hazmat for a reason. You do not want to have that lawsuit tied to you. So I would say if you are a small brand thinking about this, you have to make sure that your enclosures are right. Okay. And you gotta make sure you have a plan in place from a liability perspective, because these carry a liability that they're not a single other product will have, not a single one will have, and there's actual labeling you have to do and the packaging and everything. So I would be very mindful of that. I'll also pose something else. Whiskey fans, we used to be very cynical. I remember when Wild Turkey released one of their Master's Keep products, and they said it was cask strength and it was like 88 proof, and no one believed it, but they had the data to support it and everything. I'm surprised with hazmat, we have not seen some of those people with the same kind of like rumor mill mentality that like, oh no, they're jobbing this barrel, they're messing with this whiskey to bring it up this high proof. I'm surprised we haven't seen that. So people, when it comes to the higher proof stuff, seem to be a lot more accepting of a jump in proof, whereas a very legitimate lower proof cask strength, they are not as accepting publicly. So that's an interesting thing for me to notice amongst the whiskey geeks. It just leads me to like wonder why.
Well, I think Kenny is that skeptic that's going to start.
I am. I'm at some point, I think we need to do the third-party testing where you send it to us. We've got a hydrometer, and we can do proof testing, and we can let you know if it's right or not.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I think an interesting thing is the lower proofs, like what Jordan was talking about. We had a Pursuit Series rye. It was one of our Bardstown bourbon mash bills, 6-year-old rye. And I was tasting through a lot of barrels, and they were all entry proof of 120. And you get to this one, and you're like, "Whoa, this thing is really light, easy." Tasted like a dusty bourbon, and I like proof it. I'm like, it says 86 proof. I'm like, this is impossible. So I'd call Bardstown. I'm like, hey, this barrel came at 86. I think you pulled the wrong barrel, And they're like, okay. And they're like, no, it's the right one. I was like, well, I need to go see it in the rick house. And sure enough, somehow it dropped that much in proof. I don't know if somebody accidentally put more water into an entry proof, but it was a wild phenomenon that just isn't replicated. Whereas going higher proof seems like it's a lot easier, especially you put on those top tiers of the rick house.
Yeah. Back when the Four Roses people were trying to go, the top of their single tier warehouse, everybody was going for that. I was actually picking the ones from the first row on basically ground level and getting just above 100 proof on those. And those, in my mind, were so much better than the high proof top of the single floor than you could ever get. And I mean, that's part of the lesson I learned is if you can go down in proof, that's where your flavor is.
There was another thing that was brought up in the chat that I think we're seeing a lot of these coming from is these are Barton barrels for the most part that we are seeing to hit the market, and a lot of these are 135 and up. I don't know if this is just a Barton thing or not, because Ryan, if you recall, and Fred, you might have been there too. I can't remember when we interviewed Danny Kahn from Barton 1792 back when we were doing interviews back in my basement. And he's like, what do you bring somebody who's probably tried everything? And he brought some 12-year-old Barton samples, and all of them were between 135 to like 161.4 proof. Now, these all tasted pretty damn good, to be honest with you. I have no idea if this is just a Barton thing or if we're seeing something else out there across maybe different distilleries or anything like that. If it just happens to be the wind that floats through there. Willet isn't far away. Every once in a while you used to see a Willet Hazmat that would be, one of their older ones. And so I don't know if it's just something in that area, but it is kind of interesting that it is all kind of stemming back from one very large major distillery that, a lot of these NDPs are getting their hands on, and it's coming out to market with it as well. Not a question, just a mere observation as well. DJ asked, Fred, did you ever talk about how Discus doesn't allow high ABV to be a marketing point?
Yeah, that was, remember I talked about like the coda responsibility, and like how like many people thought that their interpretation of it was that they couldn't come out with cask strength or super high proof stuff. Well, there was also a long-standing rule within Discus that they couldn't be aired on television. And usually when one of the big companies like does something that's against the Discus rules, everyone's just like kind of like, oh, well, okay. And so there's been enough of the big companies that have either supplied it or been a part of it that the cat's out of the bag now on that one. And I would even argue that the cat's been out of the bag for a long time. What they seem to be more interested in policing now is the saying like, hey, this is 174, it'll get you there quicker, or this is 148 proof, you'll be more likely off your toes by the end of the night than the 80 proof stuff. They seem to be more interested in like how you promote it, which to me is like whatever. It's they went, remember when they went after Kylie Jenner, who one of the Jenners or Kardashians, for drinking tequila out of a straw, from a straw, and they put all of their like effort into like blocking that, and they won. They got a lot of attention for it, but they have not seemed to make a big stink about the hazmat stuff.
Well, only if we had a retailer that we could bring on the show to talk about, if hazmat whiskey sells well, and what do you know? The man shows up at the last second. Everybody welcome Blake Reaper to the show.
He made it.
Gosh, he looks burnt.
Just, let the record
red
show.
Today.
Oh my
Still
gosh.
undefeated. Big time red. Apparently, you're supposed to put sunscreen on when on vacation. And I made the mistake of wearing a backwards hat, and now I just have a red streak across my forehead, and my kids keep making fun of me. So, but
You just look like every guy
still
in
here.
the PGA
Still
tournament.
can't be slowed down by a little sunburn. And also hazmat is still on fire. So I compare it to like, the early to mid 2010s where everybody just wanted the highest IBU of IPAs. And it didn't matter if it was good or bad or whatever. It was just like, oh, this is 4,000 IBUs in this IPA. You got to try it. And that's where I think the hazmat is, because, if something's 139 proof, it'll sell out 10 times quicker if it's 140 proof. It just, unfortunately, that's where it is. And I don't know. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's fun. And it just one of those little quirks that help stuff move. So I don't think it's the worst thing ever, but it's not a judge of something's good or bad or anything else.
So you're telling me, Blake, that you would reject a flavorful 138, but there's a 141, and you're gonna pick the 141?
No, I'm not saying I would. I'm saying, if all things are considered, you probably go with that 141 proof if you're trying to sell it. But yeah,
And that's why
that's
you're
the hard part. We've
vacationing
had
right now
stuff where
because you're smart.
that's our like sometimes it's like we've had some barrels that's like super crazy high proof and we're like this just isn't good, and it kind of hurts you inside a little bit because you're like, I know there's people who would buy it, but um yeah, you kind of got to turn down the stuff that's not great.
Have you had a hazmat ambarana though? Is that what's paying for this vacation?
Oh, yeah. Don't give me any good ideas. I still got some hazmat light whiskey barrels we could throw in some Amber on. I don't think anybody's ever done light whiskey. I guess Rye 3 technically has, but yeah, hazmat Amberana light whiskey, and we call it drinking corn. And
More like
Now, do you
burning
see
corn at that
Blake
point.
with hazmat, like say it's not a bourbon, like it's a American single malt, or is it still sell well regardless? Even if it's because I've seen a bunch of American single malts come in at really high proofs too, and they seem to do well.
yeah, we've seen a lot with that. Like River Roots definitely has had some of those California single malts. We had some from the World Whiskey Society people that did well. And Charbet, I mean, I feel like they basically invented all of craft distilling, but definitely were on the forefront for a lot of this high proof stuff. And yeah, even on the single malt stuff. That's where I do kind of like it because sometimes it's a way to introduce people. It's like, well, they want it because it's hazmat, and the fact that it's American single malt is kind of secondary to them. It's the reason they give it a chance.
Yeah, I was about to say. So on your side, what you're seeing on the retail, it's like hazmat's going to sell. It just seems like it's more of a. I don't. I know we keep saying the word novelty, but you had gone back to that thing where you tried some and you're just like this isn't that good. I actually had the same exact experience. I love Pablo. I love everything Rare Character is doing. But he had recently released one. I think it was like 160 something proof, and only 3 bottles came to the state. And I ended up going to a location. I'm just going to leave it unnamed so people don't go and wipe it out. But I was actually given a small taste of it, and I tried it. I go, this is not even enjoyable. Like I'm not even enjoying anything of what I'm drinking. Now, granted, it was my first whiskey of the day, and drinking something 160 plus proof probably isn't the right way to, just take the training wheels off and go into it. But I was just like, yeah, I don't even want to drink the rest of this thing. Do you just see a lot of the customers buying it again just for that novelty, or is there something there that maybe we're all missing?
No, I mean, I, I think it's the novelty, if I'm being honest. But it's the same thing with age statements. It's like, y- you know, put something out there that's a 30-year-old bourbon. I think Jefferson's did that, or even if it's 20 years old, people are going to buy older because they just want to push those extremes as far as they can. Um, and yeah, it just it's like it's one other little thing to just hook somebody and get them interested. Um, and I don't know any other levers we have like in the bourbon world that you could even turn to amp things up. It's like proof and age statement. What else are you going to do? I don't think there's anything else. I mean, aside from just crazy finishes. um but that's pretty much it. It's like the novelty of it, the intrigue, and everybody's wondering, well, what does that taste like? And I think a lot of people do approach it like that. I think most people aren't like, oh, it's 147 proof, I bet it's amazing. They're probably just like, I wonder what that tastes like. I mean, that's typically how I look at it. Even with you telling me, hey, it's 160 proof, I did not enjoy it. I still want to try that bottle now, because like, geez, what does 160 taste like? I don't know.
This really
That's pretty
smells. You want to
wild.
smell it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem with hazmats, it's like you have to, not only are they high proof, but you have to like have lower proof offerings before it to prime your palate to tolerate them. And so like you're already like 2 or 3 in before you can even like be like, oh, I can like pick up the nuances or this or that, because it's just so intense out of the bat. And that's what has led to a lot of trouble nights for me.
You've had a few hazmat nights
That's right.
that caught up to you the next morning.
100%.
Well, I think that's the other thing too, is like with such high alcohol content, you're not getting the nuance. You're not getting what the flavor is. I mean, I know we all talk to enough people that are master blenders or whoever it is, and they're like, when they're trying to, really look at a bourbon and evaluate it, they're proofing it down to sometimes 70 proof, because the higher the alcohol, the more that gets covered up. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I like it cask strength and high proof to, really taste the whiskey. I'm like, well, a lot of times that's the opposite. It's your senses are getting numbed, and you're not getting what's behind there just because it's all alcohol.
Yeah, when
Yeah,
I, when
and I don't
I've been
think
on a
that-
tasting, sorry, quick, Kenny. When I've been on a tasting panel, we did it at 40 proof. I mean, that's what we were looking for, and it shocked me that you went down that low, but they said that's what it was, and that's how they always did it.
Yep, agreed. Ryan and I actually with Nick did a barrel pick at Castle and Key for Pinhook. It was the same deal. We started, it was like 40 barrels. We started at 40 proof and went from there.
And no lunch.
And no lunch. I'll remember that one forever.
But
yeah.
I'm so glad I missed that day.
Yeah, that was a fun one. But it is amazing at 40 proof. You could, Jordan, you could find out all the flaws or all the good characteristics of the whiskey at 40 proof. Whereas, when you drink it higher proof, it definitely, like Blake said, numbs your senses and palates, and you're kind of hidden from those and whatnot. So
I did want to circle back really quick to earlier, and it would be interesting, maybe Blake, from a shipping perspective when we're done. But Fred had made a comment on how, when you're transporting hazmat whiskeys, because you can't fly with these anything over 140 proof or more. You're designing special corks, things like that. I do wonder, and Robert had called it out, it's one of my favorite whiskeys overall and just bourbons of the year that was released, that Woodford Chocolate Redux that came out, distillery only. And I guarantee you the distillery proved it what it was. It was like, I don't know, 139.8, 139.6, something like that, right? High enough just to be close to hazmat, but low enough that you can have consumers come to your distillery and still fly home with it. And it can still easily be shipped by air if you need to the next night. So I do wonder, as distilleries take notice that, boy, consumers are really chasing proof hard, if we start seeing not hazmat bottles, but, really high proof distillery only releases that are going to be just touching that tip of hazmat, but always making sure they don't go over 140, just so they can still be transported home by those guests that are coming to visit. That'll be interesting to watch. That was just a little side note, but that came up, and I think Fred had a good point, and that was a really good example to call out with the Woodford.
I guess my question is do you think TSA is really checking these bottles?
I was gonna say, is TSA looking on labels, do we think?
No, the machines catch it. There's like they have, I mean, that stuff pops up in a little thingy with color.
Huh?
When
No
they're
one knows
X-ray,
what you got packed.
I'm about to chat GPT you and
they X-ray,
scope this thing real
they
quick.
X-ray all your bags that you check. Absolutely.
They X-ray it, but they don't have a hydrometer in there. They don't.
No,
they
it
don't scan the
comes
label.
up a certain color.
Really?
Not sure if that's true, but I will say, if you were to get caught doing it,
But
and TSA has, like, I've certainly checked bags, like, you get the little notice, and it's like, oh yeah, we open your bags, and whether they inspect the bottles or not.
It says that they can identify the general shape and density, but it cannot figure out the chemical composition or a proof of a liquid.
But if they pulled your bag and they saw that it was 140, because they will, like, they'll randomly, I have bags inspected with bourbon in there. I'm pretty sure they're going to treat it no different than if you had any other illegal object that they say you can't pack in your bag, and you're about to get slapped pretty freaking hard with a fine afterwards.
I don't know.
it's
I
not
saw a
you'll bust
guy.
customers out.
I saw a
That's
guy
true.
bring a loaded gun once, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I forgot." And it's like, "Okay, we'll take it back to your truck." I was like, "Really?" I mean, that happened in front of me one time. Kind of freaked me out a little bit.
I forgot my pocket knife one time in the bag, and I was like, "Whoops!" They're like, "Well, you can ship it back." I was like, "I just keep it."
Anyway, so TSA isn't. I just don't know if they're actually going to be checking bags and taking them from you. So I don't know, Jordan. I can kind of see what you're saying.
But as a
It's like-
retailer,
it's-
right? Like Blake,
like
you're
we
not going to
make
be able to.
like we can make like an almost hazmat and get it out there, and you could do that. But what Ron and
And
I
do you
we've
want to
always
be
done-
responsible for a plane going down? Let's throw that out there. You know what I
I'm
mean?
not responsible. I didn't bring
I
it
don't-
on the plane, right? So
because
that's-
someone
that's
else is
fair.
going to have a lithium battery in their bag, you know, and that's
Yeah,
gonna
I'm sure
start,
there's plenty of vapors that still.
And
Well, I
if you
learned
have
something.
one
I
next
thought
to the
you
other, you're
could-
hosed.
I just learned something here. I thought you could see I thought they had equipment that could check the proof of it.
See,
I
we're an
learned something new.
educational program, Kenny.
Yeah, see, that's what we're all about. But you know, Ron and I, we talk about this all the time on This Week in Bourbon. If somebody comes out with something and it's like 139.7, we look at each other and go, "Oh, so close, never gonna sell." Right? So it's just like it's that magic number. If it doesn't hit it, I don't know if people care. And this is kind of one last question I'll throw to you all. Do you think that this is one of those things? It's kind of like, you know, the age of bourbon, right? It's like, you know, you had Buddy Thompson Reserve 40-plus-year-old bourbon, and it was one of those things that I had the chance to try it. It was absolutely terrible, but it was an opportunity to try a 40-year-old bourbon. Is there anything that people would actually stop chasing high proof, high hazmat whiskey, or at some point, because this just never going to lose its magic?
I don't think it's going to lose its magic. I think, you know, there's just humans have a fascination with numbers. They like being that rare thing that's like, oh, I got this, and they have that fascination of. I think it's just always going to be an interesting, and as too is like we have an abundance of barrels, and you know you get even more of these having higher age statements on it, higher proof. I think the sky's the limit with it, really. I mean, consumers haven't. It's only gone up. You know, the demand for these types of products. I don't see it going down.
Yeah, so here's the thing though. I do think that consumers will get tired of it because it's not scalable. There are barrels that are out there, but there's not going to be a mainstay 150 proof bourbon on the market. You know, it's just or 140 proof. It's just not going to happen. And in order for one of these trends to be long term and have a larger dent in the small pocket of whiskey geeks that chase it, it has to be scalable. And so Angel's Envy was born out of the trend of barrel finishes. That's scalable. You know, age stated whiskeys to a certain age, that's scalable. This is not anything that a brand could keep up and maintain a fan base with. So even if people still have a hankering for it, there's not going to be a company that can capitalize on it to grow the fan base more than what it already is. That's my opinion.
Unless
so
you put your stake of actually blending in light whiskey, then all of a sudden,
then you're not
be-
bourbon. Yeah, then you're not
You're not
bourbon.
bourbon.
Then you're a blend, and that comes with its own marketing challenges.
but this goes.
So-
I don't know. That's where I'll disagree with you. Is like I don't think so. You know, if you have a bourbon and then you also come out with a blend that was also 140 proof, I don't know if the customer is educated enough or knows any better, because they just look at it as, oh, cool, another whiskey that's over 140 proof. Hokkaido is a great example of what consumers just don't care. Everybody knows, like, Hokkaido was a great release from Barton Bourbon Company. Does everybody know that it's a boo rye? It's a bourbon rye blend. I don't. It has Dickel in it. People don't care, right? It just comes from a premier bourbon company. So if they were to start blending in light whiskey and started raising its proof, I don't think the customer would care. They just want to go and chase after higher proof.
Okay. Well, I mean, that remains to be seen. I just don't see it happening. You know, 120 to like 135, maybe. Yeah, that's scalable, but not above 140. Just don't think
I
that's
think
gonna
we've got
happen.
room for one brand to do it. And I think that because you've got 151 rum, you've got Everclear, both of those have been around forever, but there's only, one contestant in that market. That's all there is. And we don't have a bourbon for that. So whoever can come out with a, call it a 152 or whatever, just so you're not using the 151.
Yeah.
Do have some shtick with it. And
So-
you will be that placeholder, and idiots will buy it whether they're in college or whatever.
Yeah, Brian, and that's a very good point, and that will be what I think turns people away. Is like the people in this chat tonight, they're not following the idiots, and those are the people who are supporting this cause. The minute that this becomes 151 proof rum, I don't see this sticking around. And then you're looking at like a drunkenness kind of like platform for the category. And if we're saying this can be Everclear, then I'm not only out on this, I'm going to be like very much against it, because Everclear, from what I recall in college, was, passing out drunk and, in a ditch somewhere, That's what I can recall.
Is that what
Yeah,
you recall?
I think that's
It's just what I recall. I mean,
it's in your
but
diary
I mean,
somewhere.
If this category can maintain its quality and its desire to appeal to connoisseurs versus those who want to, get drunk, then I think it has a life. I just don't think it's scalable to the point where it can even be there can be a product out there that has 20,000 bottles a year. I just don't think it's scalable to that point.
If someone does scale it, it'll ruin it for the
On that
rest
point, do you think that this? Yeah, but do you think a distillery could go and say, "Hey, it's all top floor barrels"? If Heaven Hill pulled samples of all their barrels on the ninth floor that are over 6 years old, I have to assume a lot of those, just because of the heat, the low humidity, all that, are pretty high proof.
But if
I
you
mean,
take a
is
look,
that a possible way of scaling?
it could be that. But if you take a look at their numbers, are they going to make more money off? And this is the other factor into scaling a high proof product. Are they going to make more money that way, or dropping it into Jim Beam white label when they need the quantity? I mean, they know their numbers and they know the trends, and they will continue to drop it into the volume versus trying to play with the hazmat market. If Barton's selling all this stuff off, if they wanted to come out with a hazmat product, there ain't nobody better than shifting the market than Sazerac. So if they want to prove that hazmat can be mainstay, then Mark Brown's going to do it, and whoever's running Sazerac, on the ground, they're going to do it. That's the only company that could pull it off stock wise and marketing wise. And I don't think they would do it in a way that would be like Everclear. They would try to pull it off as, say, this is not a good comparison because it's not the same proof, but some kind of series like Old Forester's 1920. They would do like some kind of series of like, this is, let me think of a brand that they, Old Stag. So Old Stag was a brand of theirs. They know as George T. Stag now, but Old Stag was a brand of theirs. And they would say, all right, this is Old Stag at, name it something, 130 proof, 135 proof, 140 proof. That is the only way that this can work, is in some kind of series or collection, and it would have to be Sazerac. I am not convinced that there's any other company that could even pull off what it would take to scale something like this.
I think
that's
Kirkland
genius
could
to
do
do like a 3-4 bottle set of that. Oh my God, that would all sell immediately.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, I was just kidding. I said, I bet Kirkland could do it. They'd be the ones to.
That would be funny.
Well, guys, I wanted to take this time to introduce a new product from the Steelbox Private Reserve. It's just going to say Hazmat, where we had weeded on our label. It's It's giving me too many good ideas. So
You need
hazmat
weeded
weeder.
hazmat ambarana.
call it Ryan's choice.
Ooh, I like that. That's
Blender selector.
I think if we do see somebody test this theory in like smaller markets, it would probably start in like a Southwest or like a Texas distillery who could probably easily crank out much higher proof bourbons much quicker to start testing
Yeah.
out like their local market. And if that took off, you might see the big guys be like,
Balcones
all right,
has done that very well. They've had a lot of high proofers.
Garrison
and people
Brothers,
that- or
exactly.
Garrison too, yeah. So,
yeah. So it's, you know, but they're not for a reason, I think. And it goes back to one, you can only drink so much this. That's not going to be your daily, not going to be even your weekly. Like you're not going to make cocktails with it all the time. And two, to Brian's point, like, yeah, there's 151, there's Everclear. Maybe you can give Bacardi 151 the benefit of being used in like flaming tiki drinks, but for the most part, it's like those are associated with, you know, college shit shows. So I don't think any bourbon company wants that association. I don't think anybody does. And if they do, it's going to be a bottom shelfer, and you just don't want that tied back to you.
Honestly, there was someone who put in the chat, and I can't find. Oh, here it is. It's Tommy V. Texan says, "Hear me out. A new branding offering, Fireball Hazmat. That could work.
ooh, that could work.
Okay, that could work.
That could work.
It
People
could.
That
would
would
buy
be
it.
that would be bad for humanity, though.
It would be so bad.
I see enough little plastic fireball, you know, shooters all across anywhere.
Could-
and you
could it
imagine if
handle
all those were-
99 cents.
The plastic would get eaten up if it's not, you know, consumed quick enough. I'd
You
imagine.
have to do glass bottles of Fireball 151.
Oh man, and then they would do their private barrel select reserve. I can just see
Yeah,
it now.
aged. Yeah, it aged the Fireball. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's great.
And it's all Canadian rye, which Canadian rye you can make over
Yeah.
over 140 proof pretty easily, right?
Very easily.
A
Yeah,
genius
Make it
marketing
easy.
idea.
They could pull that
Did
off.
we just give them their next $1 billion?
I think we did.
Yeah.
Jeez.
We
Way
don't
to go,
need to
Tommy.
make any more money for them.
Well, somebody's gonna win it today, and it's not the 6 people on the screen. So great, good to hear that. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll start kind of closing this one out. This was, again, it was kind of a fun one. I just had seen so much hazmat stuff come on the market recently, and it seemed like, you know, every week I'm getting hit up and saying like, oh, did you try this new 140, 150, 192,000 proof? I'm just like, no, where's it coming from? Because I don't, as long as I've been in bourbon, I've only seen this happen, you know, maybe a dozen times, and I've seen it at a dozen in the past week. So interesting to kind of see exactly where this is all kind of stemming from, but we'll see how much more of a life this has, especially after some of these Barton barrels that are on the open market that are definitely the hazmat ones. You know, as soon as that well starts drying up, then what's next? But let's go ahead and let's start kind of closing it out. And so we'll start with, you know, last one in, first one out. So Blake, you're up first.
And we are
very
having
stoic.
audio issues with.
You want to just go FIFO instead of LIFO?
I guess so.
I don't think he's frozen.
He's
Yeah,
like,
Blake, you're up first.
Hold on, I froze. I'm sorry. There we go. Yep, guys, always good to be here. Blake from Sealbox was a little bit late, but the streak does continue. So proud to say that. But this is a fun one. You know, I feel like it was good, insightful, kind of playful, but it is fun to see these hazmat releases come on. So always fun to be on the roundtable. So thanks for having me.
hey, we're gonna start
Absolutely.
sending you bills for editing time because of all.
I bought Lauren dinner and drinks and gave her first bourbon label. I mean, what else do you want?
That's
Very
true.
point, very point.
It's true. You're definitely been so generous of what you've been able to provide back to the Pursuit team. I appreciate it, Blake. All right, Jordan.
Jordan from Breaking Bourbon. This was actually a super fun topic. So always good seeing your faces and just really good live chat too. So I thought today was a great episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last question for you, Brian. What's worse, hazmat or buff turkey?
Oh man, if there was a hazmat buff turkey, that would be hazmat buff turkey ambarana would be the best. Yeah, so Brian was sipping corn, bourbon justice. This was fun. I wasn't drinking a hazmat for this. I remember years ago I did a hazmat on one of our BCRs probably 60 episodes ago, and it doesn't work well. So be careful with those hazmats. That's the lesson. But thanks for having me, guys.
Made for one hell of a Tuesday. You know,
It's true. Yeah, it's the only time Brian's ever been slurring his words on the round table, right? So, but this would be it. It's it, everybody. Like I said, this was a great topic to kind of dive into, especially knowing that the ecosystem of bourbon always is seeing trends pop up. Things are hot for 1 minute, they're cool the next minute, and so we'll have to see whatever comes next. But this is one that certainly is going to have appeal, as we kind of said, for a very long time. Fred said he's got 172 proof. I think that's higher than anything that I've tried. I think I'm at like 161. So I got to try it, Fred. I got to see what it's like. I think that's what this all boils down to. And I guess if you're out there and you got more than 172, let's hear it. Send us samples. We'll do a blind hazmat taste off, and then we'll hate every single one of them for your enjoyment.
Let's do it.
That's 1 million views easily with those buzzwords.
It's easy. Yeah,
we need toasted in there somewhere.
Yeah.
We can toast
Well,
anything.
we'll be
Fred.
toasted.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
Toasted Amberana, hazmat, weeded. Buffered.
Brian's really on these buzzwords here, aren't you, buddy?
That's funny.
All right. So make sure you follow all these guys on all their social media channels. Also, make sure you follow Bourbon Pursuit. And if you do like the show, you want to help support us, your best thing you can do is actually go share it with a friend that's also saying like, hey, I just got into whiskey. And then you're like, oh, try this 140 proof stuff. You know, give them a few weeks and then you can introduce them to that. But you can introduce them to the podcast and say, here, start at least episode 100. Never start at 1, but start at episode 100 and start working your way up from there. You got about 800 or 900 more episodes to go. And then if you do also like the show and you want to help support us and everything that we do as a part of being able to bring the show to you, please go head over to patreon.com/bourbon pursuit. And you can do it for as little as $5 a month. And if you do it for $5 a month, that means Ryan gets to feed his kids and his chickens one more day. So
we greatly appreciate
No
it.
pressure.
Great. We appreciate it. Thank you, good sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Toodles.
Cheers.
Sucks.
All right. Good stuff, everybody. Good stuff. We'll go ahead
Good
and
episode. Good idea.
That was fun.
If anybody has anything else to say, I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream. That way we can do the upload and let Blake get back to his aloe
tanning
berry
bed.
bath.
I'm surprised he's still standing. Looks like you need to go pass out.
Get some lotion on that, man.
How does somebody that lives
Yeah,
in Florida
yeah,
not know
yeah.
to wear sunscreen?
Well, I mean, I did put it on, but we're just in and out of the water, and it washed off. It didn't reapply. Life lesson.
Did you get a
always
new,
got to reapply? But
Profile photo for me by
You
any
know.
chance?
I'll by tomorrow. So just one day of a sting. So that's it.
Mm.
You didn't hear me, Blake. Did you get a
Did
new
I freeze?
profile
Or is
photo?
that y'all?
Yeah. Well, I just need to know if you got a new profile photo for me when you're in the pool.
No.
There it is.
I can
There's
go
it.
recreate
Delay.
that one. So you know, I feel like I've worked out a little bit since then. Yeah, what's that, about 10 years ago? So yeah, I'm definitely, I think I'm looking better. So I'm gonna go recreate that one. I'll send it over tomorrow, and feel free to upload that to episode 5. Yeah.
No, we'll just go do a side by side. That's all we're gonna do. All right,
Yeah.
guys, hang on.
Well,
I'm gonna go
Danielle
ahead and end the
definitely
stream.
Put a story.
this is so
This is
difficult.
just-
Oh, man.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you back here in a couple weeks with the next BCR 109. Who knows what the hell we're going to talk about?